Welcome to the Deep Dive, the show where we grab a whole stack of amazing sources, pull out the really potent bits of wisdom, and, well, hand them straight to you. Hopefully, ready to shed some light on your world. Today, we're diving into something pretty ancient, really profound, actually. The practice of cultivating mental stillness and that kind of unwavering focus,
Mm.
which, let's be honest, in a world just packed with distractions, notifications going off left and right, it feels like the big question is, how do we actually find that path to real inner calm, to that deep, focused attention? It feels more urgent now than maybe ever before. And the good news is the answers might just be waiting for us in some incredible preserved wisdom.
That's exactly it. That's what we're here to unpack today. This deep dive, it's all built on this really rich collection of ancient texts, specifically how Iwadure Ozo Pufe Ozo Ozo the Kwasane Shansuk, which translates roughly to the practice of staying in stillness meditation. And this term, it points directly to the tradition of Samatha or concentration meditation. But what's truly amazing about these sources, I think, is how incredibly practical they are, almost like scientific in their approach to training the mind. They really lay out a very clear roadmap. They show that achieving this deep calm, it isn't some, mystical, hard-to-grasp state. It's actually a skill you can develop through diligent, structured practice, much like, well, like any other discipline, really.
Right, and we're not just talking about, one dusty old scroll here. For this deep dive, we've really immersed ourselves in some foundational texts, things like the lamp clarifying the path to enlightenment, stages of meditation, the sutra requested by Ravada, the sutra of the king of meditative equanimity, and also the wisdom from figures like Aryasura, Bodhipudra, and Chandragomin. So, quite a lineup. Our mission today really is to unpack these incredibly detailed guidelines. We want to pull out the most actionable insights for your own journey, your path to focus, to tranquility. So yeah, get ready. Let's dive deep into this ancient art of stillness.
Okay, so let's unpack this then. Before we even get to the what should you actually focus on? These ancient texts are telling us there's some really crucial groundwork to lay first. It's clearly not just about, finding a quiet corner and closing your eyes, is it? It seems like a much bigger picture. So what does preparation really mean here? What does it actually entail, according to these masters, for establishing that state of mental calm?
You've hit on a really critical point there. The sources, they absolutely emphasize that achieving samatha, this deep concentration, it isn't some isolated thing that just starts when you sit on the cushion. No, it's about meticulously creating the right conditions, both inside and out, for the mind to actually settle down. Think of it like preparing the soil before you plant a really precious seed. You need to actively avoid anything that might hinder your efforts, and at the same time cultivate the conditions that are going to support them.
That's a great analogy, preparing the soil. It really makes you think. Are these distractions? They talk about just the obvious stuff, like noise or movement. Or do these ancient texts point to maybe some more subtle things, hindrances we might not even recognize in our busy modern lives?
Well, they definitely get into the subtle stuff. Yeah. One of the main areas they highlight is avoiding distractions, and they get pretty specific. The texts actually call out the inability to control the craving for sensual pleasures, listed as especially overeating. They list overeating as a significant cause of distraction. It's not just a side note. They draw a direct link between what we consume and our mental clarity.
Whoa, wait, overeating.
Yeah.
Really? That's fascinating. So a big takeaway right off the bat is these ancient texts are basically saying what you eat directly impacts your inner calm. Those little indulgences, maybe eating too much, they aren't just about physical comfort. They're actual, measurable roadblocks to mental focus. That feels incredibly relevant today, doesn't it? With all our struggles around attention and, well, food.
It absolutely is. The texts are very pragmatic. They see the body and mind as deeply, deeply connected. So beyond just diet, they also dive into physical discipline. Practitioners are specifically instructed to learn to maintain the Vairochana pose during meditation. And this isn't just about, looking serene or something. They say it's foundational for establishing mental stability.
That is fascinating. The physical posture itself being so integral. You mentioned the Vairochana pose. Can you maybe elaborate a bit on why would these texts put such a strong emphasis on something as, well, physical as a specific body position? How does aligning the body actually help the mind settle? And what exactly is that pose?
Good question. The Vairochana pose, it often involves the specific leg position, like the full or half lotus, maybe a particular hand gesture or mudra, and importantly, an upright but relaxed spine. The idea is that this creates a stable physical container, a stable base. And this stable container, they argue, provides a really solid foundation for the mind to settle. Makes sense, right? If your body's fidgety, uncomfortable, or slumped over, your mind is likely to be agitated too. It's about aligning the physical with the mental right from the get-go, creating that sense of groundedness, and that physical alignment, it even extends to our most basic process. Breathing. The texts are very clear. Breathing should be natural and even. It should not be jerky and noisy. Again, that subtle connection is key. Erratic breathing often reflects mental agitation, or it can even create it, whereas smooth, natural breathing, it supports and deepens the calm.
Okay, so it's not just the external environment, like finding a quiet room. It's our internal physical landscape, too. It needs to be, like, optimized, tuned for stillness. What about our internal mental landscape, then, before we even start focusing? How do these texts suggest we prepare our minds?
Yeah, that brings us to mental state management. During the meditation session itself, the practice instructs us to forget all your fears related to problems and sufferings.
Yeah.
Now, this isn't about denying things or pushing feelings down. It's more about consciously, temporarily, setting aside the anxieties that tend to cling to the mind. You're creating a space, a space of mental freedom for the practice, because you simply can't find real stillness if your mind is constantly churning with worry about yesterday or tomorrow.
Okay. This all sounds like quite a lot of steps. Very structured, very meticulous. Is there a strong emphasis on why these rules are so crucial? Do the texts explain, like, the consequences if you try to cut corners on this prep work?
Oh, absolutely. And they don't mince words. The text really stress that we need to follow all these rules because otherwise we will not receive significant benefit from the practice of meditation.
Mm-hmm.
It's not presented as, optional advice or helpful hints. It's framed as an essential prerequisite, non-negotiable almost. And the lamp, clarifying the path to enlightenment, puts it very starkly. It says, if your Shamatha practice has flaws, you will not calm the mind, even if you meditate forever.
Wow, forever. That's a pretty strong statement. It really underscores the need for diligence in this preparation phase, doesn't it? It suggests it's not just about trying harder during meditation, but about getting the foundation right before you even start. So your effort actually pays off.
Yeah, exactly. It's about working smarter, not just harder in a flawed way. And this ties directly into the whole mindset of perseverance that they encourage. Stages of Meditation offers this piece of wisdom. Quote, if you do not seek fame and honor, maintaining proper conduct, willingly accept all difficulties, and do not slacken efforts, you will very quickly attain peace of mind. Fin. You see how it connects external behavior, proper conduct, not seeking fame, and your ethical framework directly to your internal state. It suggests this really holistic approach where integrity, resilience, and consistent effort aren't just, nice ideals. They're practical requirements for finding that deep calm. If your life outside the meditation cushion is chaotic or driven by ego or ethically shaky, it's going to be incredibly hard to find stillness within. It's all connected. It's about building that consistent foundation both on and off the cushion.
That insight really changes how you think about preparation, doesn't it? It's not just a 20-minute activity you slot into your day. It's pointing towards an integrated way of living, where everything from your diet to your ethics plays a foundational role in your ability to find stillness. It's not just what you do when you meditate, but how you live your life. Okay, so we've done the groundwork. Incredibly thorough groundwork, it seems. We've prepared the body, prepared the mind. What's next? The next critical step, obviously, is directing our attention. And the texts, they outline this really fascinating array of choices for a meditation object. It goes way beyond what most people probably think of. It feels like being handed a detailed map for navigating your inner world,
Yeah.
with different tools for different kinds of mental terrain.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah, this section is really comprehensive. It reveals a deeply sophisticated understanding of how the mind actually works. The sources, they kind of break it down into 4 distinct parts, which is helpful.
Well,
First, there's a general explanation covering the broad types of objects you can choose from. Second, they talk about how to select objects that are suitable for various kinds of meditation, almost like a personalized plan. Third, they offer specific objects to start with, particularly for beginners. And finally, and this is crucial, how to actually maintain the visualized image once you've picked one. It's a very systematic guide to harnessing focus.
Right, so it's definitely not just pick something random and stare at it, is it? There are these categories, these nuances. It's just a really deep understanding of the mind and what it needs to settle down.
Absolutely. Let's dive into that first broad category, ordinary objects. The texts describe 4 main types here, showing a lot of flexibility. The first type is called conceptualized chosen objects. Now, these are explicitly defined as mental images of objects. Critically, not the physical, external objects themselves. The focus is entirely internal. On the mental picture you conjure up, and hold in your mind's eye.
Ah, okay. So it's not looking at a tree, but actually conjuring the image of the tree in your mind? That's a subtle difference, but a really significant one. It means the object isn't out there somewhere. It's something you're actively creating and holding inside your own consciousness. That sounds like it requires a different kind of mental muscle.
It does. It requires generating and sustaining that image internally. Now, the second type is kind of the opposite. Non-conceptualized chosen objects. These are external objects that you use for focus. But the goal here is deeper than just concentration. It's about learning to focus your attention on, quote, the true nature of all phenomena and trying to post the ultimate reality through observing them. So if we connect this to the bigger picture, this is moving beyond just simple focus towards a deeper, almost analytical insight into existence itself. You're not just looking at the object, you're using the external world like a mirror to understand fundamental truths, to see the reality behind the surface appearance.
Okay, that's profound. Using the external world to see ultimate reality. What's the third type?
The third type is fascinatingly open, most unusual phenomena. This basically grants practitioners the freedom to use absolutely any phenomena that exist in the world around them as objects. It really speaks to the adaptability of the practice, right? Recognizing that insight, that focus, can potentially arise from contemplating anything if you approach it with the right kind of attention.
Wow, anything. That's incredibly broad. And the fourth type?
The fourth type of ordinary object is called objects corresponding to our desires. This is really interesting. Here, you choose an object that resonates with you personally, something you're maybe naturally drawn to or desire, and you repeatedly focus on it until concentrating on it becomes so habitual that it actually helps us get rid of contaminations.
Wait, use something you desire to get rid of contaminations? That sounds almost paradoxical. How does that work?
It's quite ingenious, isn't it? It suggests this highly personalized approach, almost like a tailored prescription for your own mind. It's about leveraging what naturally pulls your attention anyway, but transforming that pull. Turning a personal inclination, something you might naturally desire, into a tool for purification. Instead, try to just suppress the desire. You're redirecting that energy through focused attention on an object related to it until the concentration itself purifies the underlying tendency. It's about transformation, not just blocking it.
That is ingenious. A very subtle psychological move. Okay, so that's ordinary objects. Next up, the texts mention something called antidote objects. This sounds like, mental first aid, objects specifically designed to counteract certain emotional states. Can you explain these?
Yeah, that's a great way to think about it. Mental first aid. These antidote objects are precisely that. They're described as countermeasures for overcoming corresponding impulses and emotional states. The texts say, look, when an emotional state like anger or craving arises, you need to apply a specific means to eliminate it. But even better, they suggest, is being proactive, doing what's necessary to prevent it from cropping up again in the future. This involves 5 key techniques or antidotes.
Okay, 5 techniques. Like what?
Well, for instance, to counteract intense passionate desire or lust, they recommend reflecting on the, let's say, repulsive characteristics of the body. The text gets very specific, focusing on features like the anus and the surrounding hair as a way to make the desire just naturally pass.
Whoa, okay. That's direct. And maybe a bit uncomfortable to think about, but I can see how that would work. It's a radical reframing.
Exactly. It's direct, maybe uncomfortable for us now, but seen as profoundly effective. It's about dismantling the attachment at its root by shifting your perception, not by just trying to willpower it away. You change how you see the object of desire. Then, for overcoming the intent to harm, or anger and hatred, the method is to actively displace those thoughts. You cultivate expansive thoughts of compassion, loving kindness, and you direct this compassion towards everyone, enemies, friends, people you feel neutral about. It's about flooding the mind with the opposite state. And for that common problem of complicated thinking, the racing mind, the endless rumination, the antidote is simple but powerful. Focus all attention on the breath. The breath acts as an anchor, cutting through the mental chatter, stopping the process of complicated thinking. The core idea is clear. For every specific mental disruption, there's a targeted countermeasure available in this toolkit.
That's certainly an arresting technique for dealing with desire. It forces a complete mental shift. Given how potent and direct that one is, are the antidotes for other things, like ignorance, similarly impactful? Or do they take a different approach? What else is in this mental toolkit?
They definitely have different approaches. For tackling ignorance, which is the really big one in this tradition, there are actually 2 methods described here as antidotes. The first method involves analyzing the 12 links of interdependent origination. This is a core teaching about how things arise based on causes and conditions. By analyzing this chain, you understand how certain causes and conditions lead to corresponding results, which cuts through fundamental confusion about reality. The second method for ignorance is taking the 6 spheres as the meditation object. These are the psychophysical elements: earth, water, wind, fire, space, and consciousness. Meditating on these basic building blocks of experience also helps dispel ignorance about the nature of reality.
It's like breaking down existence into its fundamental components to understand how it all works and how we work. That makes sense as an antidote to confusion. So that covers desire, harm, complicated thinking, and ignorance. Are there more antidotes?
Those are the main 5 listed under the antidote objects section, designed specifically as countermeasures. It's a pretty comprehensive set covering major obstacles.
Okay, fascinating. So after ordinary objects and antidote objects, what's the next major category?
Next up are the wisdom-related objects. These are really getting into the deeper end of the pool. These methods go beyond just calming the mind or counteracting a negative state. They aim directly at achieving deeper insights, specifically about the nature of the self and fundamental reality. The core aim here is to, quote, post the absence of independent existence of the self. This is a really profound philosophical goal underlying the practice. It's moving beyond just achieving calm towards deep, transformative insight. And there are 5 techniques listed here.
Okay, so this is where concentration meets wisdom, trying to see through the illusion of a solid, separate self. What are these 5 techniques?
Well, one involves the analysis of psychophysical components. This sounds technical, but it's basically breaking down your own experience into its mental and physical parts like your body, feelings, perceptions, mental habits, consciousness. By looking closely at these components, you come to realize that yourself isn't some separate, unchanging thing behind these parts. It is just this collection, this constantly changing aggregate. So no independent selves to be found. Another technique is the analysis of sensory perception structures. This involves reflecting on the whole process of sensing the sense organs, eyes, ears, etc., their objects, sights, sounds, and the consciousness that arises from their meeting. Looking at these 18 aspects helps deconstruct our experience of a solid world out there and a solid me perceiving it. A third way is analyzing perceived images. You reflect on how sense organs are just conditions for consciousness, how objects condition what we perceive, and how consciousness only arises after that contact happens, leading to thoughts. Again, it breaks down the seemingly simple act of perception into its conditional parts. Then there's revisiting that reflection on interdependent origination, the 12 links we mentioned earlier. But here, the focus is on concluding that this whole chain, which leads to suffering, doesn't possess independent existence either. It's all dependently arisen. And the 5th wisdom technique is about the skillful recognition of acceptable and unacceptable. This involves gradually understanding how your intentions lead to actions and how those actions lead to results. Through this, you realize that negative intentions are an impulse to negative actions, which in turn lead to a negative result. This understanding itself becomes an object of wisdom, clarifying the path away from suffering.
Wow, that's a really comprehensive framework for deconstructing the self and understanding how reality functions, including ethical cause and effect. It's definitely moving way beyond just sitting still into actively reshaping perception. So the final category mentioned was objects for eliminating emotional contaminations. How does this differ from the antidote objects? It sounds similar, but maybe deeper, like a full purification.
Exactly. While antidotes are like immediate first aid for specific emotions, these objects are aimed at removing emotional impurities or contaminations more fundamentally. They're categorized by subtle and gross levels. The first category here involves progressing through the 4 levels of meditative concentration, sometimes called the 4 jhanas. This practice involves moving through different realms or states of deep concentration, starting in the desire realm, our normal state, then moving into the form realm, the formless realm, and potentially even a realm of absence of thought. The practice explicitly moves from a gross level of focus to an incredibly subtle level, with the ultimate aim being to reach a state of non-meditation, where the effortful practice dissolves into effortless presence.
So this isn't just picking one object, but like climbing a ladder of concentration states, each level deeper and more refined than the last. That sounds like a complete curriculum for training the mind.
It really is. A systematic training program to refine awareness stage by stage. The second category under eliminating contaminations is using the 4 noble truths themselves as objects. Here, you're actively comprehending the 16 aspects of impermanence related to these truths. You reflect deeply on suffering, its actual cause, the possibility of its cessation, and the path that leads to that cessation. These profound truths can be used as chosen objects in samatha practice, meaning you hold them with focused attention. And then they can also be analyzed deeply in vipassana or insight meditation. So here you see that powerful combination again. Focused attention, samatha, and deep analytical insight, vipassana, working together. You're using these fundamental truths about existence as the very content for concentrated thought, allowing them to soak into the mind and transform it through that sustained focus.
Okay, this is where it gets really practical, almost like a personalized mental workout plan. The texts seem to suggest different objects work better for different people or different mental states, right? It's definitely not a one-size-fits-all thing. It really feels like they're providing a kind of mental pharmacy, offering a precise prescription based on what's going on inside your head at that moment.
You've captured it perfectly. That's exactly the sense you get. The texts fully acknowledge that people have different temperaments, different dominant emotions, different challenges. Drawing from sources like the stages of Sravakas and the sutra requested by Ravada, they lay out specific prescriptions based on whatever a practitioner's main emotional or mental pattern might be. It's very much about diagnosing your current mental affliction, you could say, and then applying the precise antidote rather than just using a general calming technique for everything.
So can you give some examples? Like, if someone struggles with X, the texts recommend Y.
Sure. For instance, if you're a practitioner really wrestling with intense, passionate desires, like we mentioned with the antidotes, you're specifically guided to use the repulsive features of the body as your meditation object. It directly counters the pull of that desire. If, on the other hand, your main issue is hatred or anger, the instruction is clear. Meditate on loving kindness. Cultivate the opposite state. If your mind is typically full of ignorance or confusion, maybe about cause and effect, you'd reflect on the 12 links of interdependent origination. If pride is a big issue for you, the text suggests analyzing the 6 structures of sensory perception, breaking down the process of seeing, hearing, etc., which can undermine the sense of a solid, important self. And if you suffer from that restless, complex conceptual thinking, the constant mental chatter, the go-to is to concentrate attention on the breath. They even have recommendations for more subtle forms of ignorance, like confusion about mental events or the self-suggesting analytical research into psychophysical components. Or for misunderstanding causes, analyze processes of perception. Or for not grasping impermanence, suffering, and non-self, analyze the law of interdependent origination. And focus on recognizing acceptable and unacceptable aspects of one's own intention and behavior.
It's incredibly specific, almost like a diagnostic manual for the mind.
It really is. And it continues. For wanting freedom from desire, they recommend the higher meditative concentrations corresponding to the form and formless worlds we talked about. For freedom from conditioning altogether, reflect on the Four Noble Truths to gain clear understanding. For just generally purifying contaminations, reflecting on suffering and dissatisfaction itself can be the object. And then there's guidance for people who don't have one dominant issue. If a practitioner feels full of readiness to work with all these objects, they should simply choose the one that suits them best. Very pragmatic. And what's really fascinating, for individuals who maybe experience all emotional states pretty equally, or maybe those who aren't prone to really strong emotions at all, the texts say they may choose any of the above methods of meditation. But, and this is important, they should first stabilize their minds with the most suitable samatha practice, meaning basic concentration to calm the mind, and not with vipassana, the analytical insight practice. So the advice is, know yourself. Choose the right tool for your current state. And crucially, build foundational stability first, especially if your mind isn't naturally inclined one way or another, before jumping into the deeper analytical stuff. Prioritize calm before insight, if calm is lacking.
That's incredible wisdom, that level of personalization. It moves so far beyond generic just meditate advice. It shows a really deep empathetic understanding that people are different. They struggle with different things and they need different tools. It really highlights how practical these ancient teachings are. Okay, so building on that idea of starting points, if someone is just, beginning this journey into stillness, or maybe they just have a really overactive mind, feels constantly bombarded by everything, where do these texts suggest they actually start? It sounds like there's a kind of gentle but firm recommended entry point, maybe designed specifically to help tame that initial mental whirlwind.
Yes, absolutely. There's a very clear recommendation, especially as the texts say, for those prone to active, complicated thinking, which, let's face it, is probably a lot of us today. For such individuals, the guidance is they should first dedicate themselves to meditation, whose chosen object is their own breath. The breath is just so universal. It's always there. It's an anchor that's always accessible, and it's intimately connected to our internal state. So it's ideal for starting to tame that restless mind. And when choosing a visualized image, if you go that route, the advice is very clear. Stick to one object, not provoke the mind. Simplicity is key at the beginning. Avoid anything that adds complexity or potential distraction.
That makes so much sense. You don't want to overwhelm a beginner. Yet give them too many options, ask them to juggle multiple things mentally. It's counterproductive. It's about building that basic muscle of focus first. And I remember the lamp clarifying the path to enlightenment, echoing this really clearly, emphasizing, establish the mind in a state of calm, directing all attention to the chosen object. That singular focus seems paramount.
Absolutely. Noble Aryasura, another key figure, reinforces this point strongly. He says, you will achieve mental stability by concentrating without distraction on the chosen mental image. Do not try to focus on several images at once, as this may distract the mind. It really hammers home the critical importance of that singular focus, especially for beginners whose minds are often easily scattered and could feel overwhelmed by trying to do too much too soon. Bodhibhatra also talks about contemplation, particularly focusing on the inward-directed approach for starting out. Inward-directed contemplation, he explains, could involve visualizing one's own body in the form of deity, a skeleton, or a sacred trident. Or it could simply be concentration on the breath, like we said, or maybe an imagined seed syllable, a mental sphere, light, or even on sensations of joy and happiness. The common thread is that these are all internal, self-generated points of focus that can provide a stable anchor within your own experience rather than relying on something external.
Right, so finding something tangible, even if it's imagined, to anchor the mind within your own inner world. What about external symbols then, like that Buddha statue you mentioned? Are those recommended for beginners?
That's a good point. While some traditions might caution against using everyday objects like trees and stones, the texts we're looking at suggest that it is better to use a Buddha statue. But interestingly, they add that ultimately this is not a fundamental issue. The function of the object providing a stable, clear point for focus seems more important than its specific form. So the Buddha statue isn't necessarily the ultimate goal in itself, but it can be a really powerful starting point for many people. It's a universal symbol of calm, of enlightenment. It can inspire focus and provide a very clear, stable image. It's about leveraging that symbolic power if it resonates with you.
Okay, so it's a skillful means, a potentially helpful tool.
Exactly. And the Sutra of the King of Meditative Equanimity actually supports this idea quite directly. It says, Buddha had a perfect form, which shone with gold. Anyone who uses this form for meditation will achieve samadhi, that state of deep concentration. And similarly, from the Vairochana, specifically Book 3, one who intends to perform Shamatha practice should visualize a Buddha statue exactly as they saw it or heard its description. That emphasis on visualizing it clearly, vividly, aids the concentration. But, and this is key, these initial objects, whether the breath or a statue, they aren't the final stop on the journey. The Stages of Meditation, Book 1, advises that once stability is achieved with an initial image, practitioners should then focus attention on psychophysical components, elements, and other objects. So it clearly tells us that the initial object is a stepping stone. It's a way to train the mind to build that stability. And once the mind is stable, then it can turn its trained focus toward those deeper, more complex investigations of reality we talked about earlier. It's a progressive path, building skills step by step.
Okay, so you've done the prep, you've chosen your starting object, maybe the breath, maybe a visualized image. You're sitting there, maybe in the Vairochana pose, breathing evenly, you're all set. But then, well, the mind does what it does, right? It wanders off, it gets hooked by a thought, drifts into a memory, forgets what it was supposed to be doing. It happens to everyone. How do these ancient texts instruct us to actually stay with the object, to keep bringing that focus back gently but firmly, even when the mind is constantly trying to pull away?
This is really it, isn't it? This is the core challenge where the rubber meets the road in meditation practice. And the texts are very, very clear on this. They state that maintaining the visualized mental image during meditation is an indispensable condition for achieving meditative concentration. You absolutely have to do it. And to actually do it, they say you need two key mental faculties working together like partners. The first one is mindfulness. The original term, pamyatovani, carries a sense of remembering or recollection. This faculty helps us maintain attention on the chosen object of meditation, not allowing the mind to be distracted. It's the part of the mind that remembers, ah yes, I'm focusing on the breath. It keeps you tethered. The second faculty is alertness. The term here, vigilance, means something like vigilance or watchfulness. This helps us recognize that we have stopped maintaining mindfulness, and because of this, the mind has become distracted. Alertness is like the internal alarm bell. It's that subtle awareness that notices, oh wait, I'm thinking about lunch, not the breath anymore. It catches the drift. The commentary on the Ornament of Sutras explicitly defines these two, mindfulness and alertness, as absolutely vital, interconnected partners in the practice. You need both.
Mindfulness to stay, alertness to notice when you've strayed. Okay. And to help us really grasp how to use these, how to gently but firmly keep returning to the object, I remember these texts use a really vivid analogy, something about an elephant. Can you walk us through that powerful image? How does it illustrate the jobs of mindfulness and alertness in taming the mind?
Oh yeah, it's a classic and incredibly helpful analogy. It's really impactful. The traditional analogy goes something like this. The mind resembles a mad elephant. Wild, powerful, easily agitated, prone to wander off and cause trouble. And the object of concentration, your breath, your image, is like a firmly fixed post, something solid to tether it to. Then mindfulness is like a rope. It's what connects the elephant, the mind, to the post, the object. It's that continuous connection. And alertness is like a hook, or maybe a goad. It's the tool you use when the elephant starts to wander off the path. So the instruction is, we should use mindfulness and alertness to tie the elephant of the mind to the post, the object of concentration. Mindfulness provides the steady connection, and alertness provides the gentle correction when needed.
That imagery is just so good. You can almost picture it, right? This powerful, wild, easily distracted mind, the elephant. And then you have these tools. The rope of mindfulness, keeping it generally connected to the post, the object, and the hook of alertness, just gently guiding it back whenever it starts to veer off course. The essence of the middle way repeats this too, doesn't it? Something like, when the elephant of the mind wanders, it must be tied with the rope of mindfulness to the strong post of the object of concentration, using the hook of alertness. It really emphasizes that gentle but persistent re-engagement, not like fighting the elephant.
Exactly. It's not about wrestling the elephant into submission. It's about consistent, gentle guidance. And this brings us to one of the most crucial and perhaps subtle points about maintaining focus: the balance of effort and relaxation. This whole process, it's not a brute force attack on distraction. The texts are incredibly wise here, warning against two extremes. They say, if we exert too much effort, if we try too hard, grip too tightly, it will actually cause excitement or agitation in the mind. The mind becomes tense, stressed, unable to settle. It's like trying to hold a bird too tightly, you'll crush it, or it'll struggle frantically. But on the other hand, if we try to relax too much, if the effort becomes too slack, the mind will become sluggish and fall into a stupor. It loses its clarity, becomes dull, drowsy, unfocused. Like letting go of the bird completely, it just flies away or falls asleep. Therefore, the crucial instruction is, we should maintain a balance between effort and relaxation.
Ah, okay. So it's not about pure willpower, just gritting your teeth and forcing focus. And it's not about just zoning out either. It's this subtle dance, this fine line between effort and ease. You need just enough tension, maybe, to stay present and engaged, but not so much that you're straining or creating more agitation. It sounds like tuning a guitar string, finding that perfect pitch where it resonates clearly, not too tight that it snaps, not too loose that it's just dull.
That's a perfect analogy. Tuning an instrument, exactly. Chandra Goman, another great master, has some really insightful words on this exact point. He states, if we are excessively diligent, excitement will arise, and if we do not exert enough effort, we will fall into sluggishness. It is so difficult to keep the mind in balance, so why disturb the mind unnecessarily? And he repeats it slightly differently in his Dasana Sattva. Excessive effort leads the mind to excitement, and insufficient effort to sluggishness. It is so hard to achieve a balanced foundation. Why then should we let the mind disturb its balance unnecessarily? It's such a profound insight, isn't it? Finding stillness isn't about pushing harder, nor is it about completely letting go. It's about skillfully, mindfully navigating that middle path, finding a dynamic equilibrium where your mental energy is just right, not too high, not too low, but perfectly poised for sustained, clear, relaxed attention. It's a continuous process of subtle adjustment, an art of being present without striving too hard or becoming too lax. Hashtag outro.
Wow. What an incredible journey we've taken today, really diving deep into the practice of staying in stillness meditation. It feels like we've covered so much ground. We started with exploring just how critical that preparation phase is, everything from understanding how our diet and cravings affect our focus, right down to the specific Vairochana pose and keeping the breath even. Foundational stuff. Then we ventured into that huge landscape of meditation objects. Understanding that focus isn't just one thing, it can be directed at ordinary mental images, specific wisdom insights, even targeted antidotes for difficult emotions. So much variety. We learned about tailoring the practice, finding what works for your specific mental state and the best places to start if you're a beginner, like using the breath. And finally, that crucial role of mindfulness and alertness, the rope and hook for our wandering elephant mind, and that delicate balance between effort and relaxation.
It's really quite remarkable when you lay it all out. What we've uncovered is that these ancient texts, they aren't just offering vague spiritual guidance. They're providing a truly sophisticated, incredibly practical manual for mental training. They reveal such a deep, nuanced understanding of the human mind, its tendencies, its potential for clarity, for peace. The wisdom feels surprisingly pragmatic, incredibly detailed. It's like a comprehensive roadmap for anyone, really, seeking deeper concentration, not just in formal meditation, but potentially bringing that focus into their everyday lives, too. It really speaks to the timelessness of these insights into how our minds work.
So, when you boil it all down, what does this really mean for you listening right now? We've seen just how deeply interconnected everything is, our physical posture, our emotional states, even what we had for lunch, and then the precise choice of what we focus on. It all plays a role in achieving that stillness. These ancient masters, they understood the mind with such incredible precision, and they offered solutions that feel just as relevant, maybe even more so today, trying to navigate this, flood of information and distraction in the modern world.
And it does leave you with a really important question to ponder, doesn't it? What if the biggest distraction we face isn't actually out there in the noise, the notifications, the demands of the world? What if, maybe, it's also in how we're approaching the inner work itself? How might understanding these subtle balances, like that razor's edge between effort and relaxation, or that surprising link between eating habits and mental clarity, how might that understanding reshape your daily focus, your own personal quest for inner calm? Could it be that the path to profound stillness isn't always about more effort or trying harder, but maybe about more skillful effort, about cultivating a deeper, more holistic kind of self-awareness informed by this ancient wisdom?
That's a powerful thought to sit with, definitely. We really hope this deep dive has given you some profound new tools, maybe some fresh perspectives for your own journey. Perhaps consider trying some of these techniques, observing your own mind with that balanced awareness, and just seeing how these ancient insights might bring a new level of focus, maybe a deeper tranquility into your life. Till next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.